just gotta keep moving forward.
Hey guys, Brian here, and today I'm going to go ahead and take apart my JAG Arms PHX15 rifle. It's basically OEMed by VFC, and the tricky part is the ambidextrous selector. Got a lot of message about that, and so far I don't see any videos for it, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to take this apart and put it all back together and hopefully help you out. So enjoy this video and stay tuned. Thanks. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. This will basically work for the JAG Arms rifle and for the VFC rifle since it's OEMed by VFC. Only addition is the ambidextrous selector, which is new. So let's go ahead and take it apart. First off, take the mag out and make sure there's no battery. So the rifle is technically safe now in airsoft world. I'm going to go ahead and put the small little parts here, if you guys can see them, and I'll do my best to show them in my hand and explain what I'm doing. So first up, a small punch pin and a small hammer. Just go ahead and tap front body pin out and slide like so. So this will be your upper receiver with the rotary style hop up and a brass barrel. Nothing too special, gets the job done. Really good fact about the VFC rifles, you're gonna have a small claw at the end that stabilizes the brass barrel, and they can actually, in my opinion, better than most type bores. So, and you don't have to clean it. So this is basically my rifle I used for Milsim West and left it basically stock. So let's go ahead and check it out. I do not have an AR wrench in case most of you don't have an AR wrench, but I will show you how to work on the castle nut with a flathead. So let's go ahead and take off the buffer tube. Inside you're going to need a long Phillips screwdriver to reach in here. Once you have it lined up in there, go ahead and twist. If it's too tight, you might have to back out the castle nut. And if that's the case, you would get your flathead and tap to loosen, or when you're done, tap to tighten. That's a little trick you can use in case you don't have an AR wrench. Go ahead and remove the screw. And you'll notice you have the small screw and washer pop out and the little lock washer. Put those aside. Buffer tube and castle nut, just back it out so you remember. Sling loop. Cool thing about the PHX rifle, it doesn't have the famous junctions right here. It's a straight wire, so you can actually yank on if needed. Okay, for the pistol grip, I'm going to go ahead and use a small 2mm Allen and remove and slides up. You're also going to notice, oops, there's no motor plate or anything like the Marui because it uses a large set screw. Regular motor wires. Just be gentle with the wires. Now you notice you have the wires on the back part of the pistol grip and the motor is springy. This is what you want. If you have a wire up front and a wire in the back, it can get jammed unless it comes that way. Depending on the grip, that's a whole nother story. Basically, copy the Tokyo Marui, the Classic Army, the VFC, the Echo 1, even the G&G version of wires in the back for the regular grip. So springy, and that's good. There's going to be a lot of other videos on the internet for that, so go ahead and check that out if you're confused. Torque motor, put that over here so it doesn't stick to anything. And let's go ahead and take this apart. You're going to have two little screws on the inside, just like a regular M4 pistol grip. And wiggle it. Two little screws, hold on the grip, put those aside. Okay, now let's take a look at the functions. You have the mag release, press the button, but there's no set screw. Also you have the bolt release, which works with this little part here. And you have the ambidextrous selector. So let's go ahead and take this apart and I'll show you the steps. So for the bolt release, there's a small little pin right here. I'm just going to press, pin comes out, and then I can press down on the catch part and pull this out. Done. Now for the mag release, you have to take the mag release out because you press the button in and then you twist it. Lefty-loosey, my bad. Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. And if you had the bolt catch or the bolt release here, it'd get in the way. So you pop this off. This comes out. Now I have my thumb or my finger still there. What I do, just so I don't lose it, is I basically put a small punch pin in there and wiggle it because it pops up as you saw. And you just don't want to lose it, so it will fly across the room. Okay, so I have these off. Now let's go ahead and take off the selector switch. First up, let's go ahead and, well, let me take off this pin, just in case. For the pin, I'm going to use a small punch. And for the PHX rifles, it's usually on the flag side or the right side, and pop that out. Now, back to the selectors. Basically have it on semi-auto mode. This will help with the alignment of the parts and for easy takedown. So I'm going to use a 2mm screw again, and I'm pressing down on the selector switch so it doesn't wiggle or anything because there's a small spring and bearing. So hold it in place. Okay, have a screw, selector switch, and a small spring. It's basically going to stain it because there's a little bit of grease. And then you have the small ball bearing. If you have it on semi mode, it'll just sit in that little divot and stay there. So you have these parts. Just put them over there. Flip it over again. It's on semi. On the right side, there's no spring or detent. It's just chilling there. You have a small little cog to hold it in place. That's kind of one of the reasons why it's kind of loose. It's not held in place because there's no bearing. Okay, flip it over again. Use my small punch and just press. Go ahead and pull out the rear pin. It's going to be captured. It's going to stay in there, little C-clip, and that's it. Now just wiggle. Now for some VFCs, you're going to notice it's going to be stuck. You took out the selector, pins, everything, it's out. Why is it still stuck? It's a really tight fit back here. Simple trick is use a small hammer or the back of a screwdriver and literally just tap. Tap it a little and it'll come out. It's just a really snug fit, high quality. Basically parts go together like a glove. So here is the selector. Yeah, that's it, basic. Put that aside. Okay, now let's say if your selector parts fell off. Oh no, there's just parts everywhere. Okay, for the parts that will fall off, let's go ahead and look at them. You have the right side selector, little nub that interacts. You have this little bar with flat faces that interact with these two little cogs. Basically, they go through the gearbox. So let's just put those aside. Cool thing about these, they're steel, they're not going to break. If I was going to use this, well, I'm going to use this more, of course, but if this was mine, and I was going to take this apart like every other weekend for whatever reasons, I would glue one of these. Old school VFCs had a small set screw that was like a 0.5mm. They used like in their Scar series, and that screw would always strip out, or the tool would get stripped out. And it was good and solid, but this alleviates any small tools and the fact that anybody can work on this now compared to before where it's literally specialized tools. So put those aside, and it's still in semi mode, so let's go ahead and wiggle this off. It comes out and tack nicely to it. Okay, and off. Okay, now let's go ahead and take the gearbox apart. First up, you're going to notice the piston is all the way back. Cool thing about this is you have a reversal latch hole right here, so you can use a small pick or tool, pull that reversal latch, simple. Flip it over and you're going to notice your bolt catch. One tricky thing about a VFC, most times I forget it, is this small little screw here. This goes into the spring guide. Let's go ahead and take this out. If you forget this, the chance of gearbox failure is very small in a stock setup. Basically keeps the gearbox from not wiggling. So keep this, don't lose it. Okay, let's flip it over. I'm gonna go ahead and use a small Phillips and take apart, or just take off your bolt release, or your bolt catch. Wiggle it, be careful with the little eyelet here and here. And the screw. Now for the little spring and the little C-clip, just leave that alone, don't touch it. You don't need to take that apart for any reason unless you want to remove it. So, put the tools aside, and now I'm going to use a large Phillips and go ahead and take apart, and done. A quick note, you will have, for the gearbox, you will have a button or a flat or a dome shape, whatever you want to call it, and then for some you have a cone shape, if you can see the difference. Just don't mix them up, they're not going to fit correctly. And put the screws aside. Okay, now let's go ahead and open it. I'm going to put my fingers on the cylinder and then thumb on the back to catch the spring guide, and here. You can use the tool method if you like, which is fine, but been doing this for a long time, so up and out and done. Okay, this is basically the stock PHX. Let's go ahead and take a look and notice the little spring and collar where the gear came loose. Well, it's not bad, it's just spring loaded. Okay, gearbox shell, spring, bearing, solid metal bearings, nice. Put that aside, don't need that right now. Okay, let's go ahead and check out the parts and take it apart, put it back together. Okay, you're gonna have the tap plate, flexible, cool. Piston, polycarb, steel, aluminum ported, nice. Cylinder head, it's a little thicker back here, cool. And O-ring inside the nozzle, nice little touches here and there, put those aside. Your gears, of course, we're gonna say VFC, and these are technically the speed gears by VFC. So that's why with this rifle you get about 25 a second with a brick lipo. So you have speed, VFC, these gears. They're actually really good. They don't just break like the internet says. You also will have shims in there, unlike what the internet says. They're shimmed. It just prevents them from wiggling with these springs, which you can add extra shims if you don't want that spring function, because it looks like a normal collar length there. It's just interesting. Okay, remove the trigger spring, put those aside. Use another small Phillips and remove the safety. Oh, I lost a little screw. Lift up. The safety bar will consist of these little parts. You have the block that works with the trigger, spring that resets it, that little screw, and this part works with the selector plate. That's considered your safety. Put that over there, and let's continue. Go ahead and another small Phillips and take off the screw for the trigger guard, the trigger harness, my bad. So you basically have the spring, the trigger, and a little part itself. Cool. I'm going to put that there, and the little parts there in the middle. Now you have the cutoff lever. Remember, you want it to be wiggly like this, but you want the screw to be secure. Because if you tighten this down all the way, you're only going to have full out because it's going to be locked open. Okay, little screw. Oh, almost dropped it, jeez. Little screw, cutoff lever, flip it over. You're gonna notice this little tiny spring. Be careful not to lose this spring. You have to buy like the spring rebuild kits. The version 2s to, if you lose this, or you can use from like mechanical pencils. So put those aside. And good. Now for the selector plate, you don't really need to take this apart unless you're going to cut it to make it like a semi-auto sniper. So to take this off in case you need to, if it's a plastic one, you can bend a little. But since this is steel, if you bend it, it's going to warp. This, you need the circular shape. And if you warp it up, down, or elongate it, you're going to have selector problems. It's not going to work. But if you need to take this apart, you have to take all these off. And what I like to do is literally just pull a little to get it over like this 1/2 millimeter bump. That's it. I'm not flexing it or anything. It just pops right off. So cool. Here's my selector plate. And that's basically it. Okay, now let's go ahead and put this all back together. We have all the parts here and the gun all taken apart. Let's put it back together and go step by step. First up, grab your gearbox shell. And side note, I did not take anything off, did not move the shims. It's literally just showing you how to take it apart, put it back together, so you can do this yourself. So slide the selector plate on, and a little resistance on that bushing. Pop it, good. Wiggles, slides freely, good. Gonna go ahead and get my cutoff lever. Put the cutoff lever in like so. Pull the spring right here and put it right there so I don't forget. Go ahead and install a little screw. Hand tighten. Just like that, not too much. And it can move freely, but the screw is nice and secure. It's not moving. Flip it over, and you're gonna notice the cutoff lever, little silver parts right there. And I'm gonna go ahead and install the spring. I'm gonna put my thumb like so it doesn't jump off or get lost, and slide it like that. So now it's on both little hooks. Good, done. Okay, now for the wire harness. Wire harness, it has a cool inline MOSFET, that's nice. And trigger contact. I'm gonna go ahead and close these just a smidge. Cool. As you see, I just closed them just a little. That will shorten the trigger time just a smidge. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and install this, but don't forget the spring and the screw. I'm going to insert and press down. You're gonna notice a screw hole here and a peg on the top. They line up, and it's in there nice and solid. Make sure you get your wires and put them back how you found them. Basically slide them down like so. And good. You want to make sure that there's no interference if the motor goes in. So you're going to press these wires down all the way. And the secondary red wire will go on top. Like that. So go ahead and get your screw. Insert. Tighten. And your spring. Hook the front part, and I usually hold my finger on it so it doesn't snap off and fly. And use a small little pick and line it up. Several attempts, but once you got it, you got it. Okay, cool. So it's springy. Good. Now let's go ahead and put the safety parts in. Insert. The spring basically will rest up against this little bar here on the gearbox, and like so. Okay, before you tighten it, double check that when you press this forward, like if it's on safe mode, this matches. Cool. Tighten. You don't want to tighten too much, just hand tighten barely because it's going into plastic. And then now your trigger. You're going to have the trigger spring like so. Basically the hook part goes in like that. And I already bent mine a little down so it catches better on the bottom of the gearbox so it doesn't jump up. Basically press in and like that. You're going to have the axle hole here. So let's take a closer look. You basically have trigger, cutoff lever moves. It's on safe mode, semi, full auto, safe, semi, full auto. Simple. If you can understand that, that's the hard part of version 2. Everything else is simple for you. So let's go ahead and finish putting it back together. Reverse the latch. Basically a little spring like so. Put it in your hand like that. Press in. And wrap the spring around. Done. I'm going to just put it like that. Make sure there's no shims loose. There's a good amount of grease that holds them in place, so you're fine. Take the reverse latch out, just as a precaution. Drop it in. Cool. Good. And for the bevel and the shim at the same time, going to take this. I'm going to pull the reverse latch, press down with my finger on the axle so it doesn't move, and take this, drop it in place, and twist to make sure it clicks. When it's clicking, that means it's going correctly against the bevel gear, and it's just cool to see it cycle. Go ahead and put it in this orientation so it doesn't get caught on the tappet plate. That's considered timing. Oh. Let's go ahead and get the parts. Assemble. Oh. Make sure you back this up all the way. Basically want to make it flush right here. And good. A good way to check is line up this hole with a cylinder in the gearbox. Make sure you check these corners, and that's how it's perfect. Okay, insert. The nozzle will attach to the tappet plate like this and slide on. Good. And go ahead and insert. Okay. Press on the cylinder, making sure it's flush. Feel on the back side with your fingers. Make sure it's basically flush with the gearbox shell. And that's good. Okay, now for the tappet plate. Basically all it does is it slides forward and back, being pulled by the sector here. I'm going to make sure it's in these correct grooves. Tappet plate will ride in these grooves, as you can see the little grease marks. So once you have it lined up, put a little spring on there so it's springy. That's firing, BB load and hop up, pulls back to load a BB chambers, fires, boom, 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 like that. Okay, now make sure that the piston is on the rack. As you can see, you don't want it at a weird angle. That will cause it to fire one time and break. So make sure it's on the rack correctly. Okay, let me go ahead and close this up real quick. Before I do, I always check spring, 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 good. Let me go ahead and get the spring again. It's a lot of spring. Put it like that. Fingers on the cylinder. And I'm just going to go ahead and press in on the spring. Line up the spring guide on the little pegs at the 9 and 3 o'clock. Press in a little, and you're good. Check. there's a little gap. The reversal latch is sticking up a smidge. Okay, and good. Basically it's seamless now. There's a little play because of the wiring, but good. So now that that's done, you can go ahead and put the screws back in and close it up. As you notice, I checked the nozzle, made sure it can move freely, and the piston's on the racks. So that's good. Get your screws, put them in the correct holes, and then tighten. All the screws in, don't forget a little bolt catch, line it up, and a little screw for it. Good. Spring, don't forget the little screw. Okay, and basically done. Now let's just go ahead and put it back together. Now I'm going to show you how to go ahead and install the ambidextrous selectors for the JAG Arms rifle. So let's go ahead and get started. First up, gather your parts. Make sure the gearbox is complete, and you want to isolate your parts. You're going to have your left side selector, your right side, and your parts in the middle. The parts in the middle are pretty simple and straightforward how they attach. You have D-shaped parts. These gears basically go like that, and they will go through this hole, just like a regular VFC. This is OEMed by VFC, but this is the newer type. So put those aside. They will fall apart, don't worry. Okay, now let's look at how the selector works. You have the large section and a small section. Be gentle on those parts. You have large section, small section. Flip like so. And that's basically how it works. It fits. But how do you install these parts? Well, the large section is going up for the select mode. So I'm going to put the large section on the top. Remember how I said on semi-auto mode? So I'm going to slide that in. It might take some time to gently wiggle it in. And you got to turn it. But cool. It's sitting, as you can see. You have the large part on the outside that interacts with the selector plate. The thin part, the gear part, will actually work with these parts. So this is basically on semi-auto mode. Let me go ahead and briefly install this so I can better explain how this works. Okay, so you have semi-auto mode, safe, and full auto. So now let's just go ahead and assemble it. If you have any more questions, just message below or Facebook me. I'm going to put these parts back over there. And same concept for the right side selector. So basically, the fat side will go on the bottom. Don't lose a little screw. So let's go ahead and put this together. I'm just going to pinch and hold, place like so, drop it in place. Simple. Grab the other one, go like that, done. Double check. You always have time to move this if needed. Just do your best, keep it somewhat at 12 o'clock position for the fat side. Go ahead and flip it over. And remember, the fat side on the right side, fat right will be on the bottom, if that makes sense. Place like that. So if I pinch in the middle, semi, semi, good. That's it. Let me go ahead and install this. I'm going to transfer my finger so it's a little easier to install, and double check semi, semi, good. Go ahead and install the wires and line it up. Make sure nothing's getting pinched. It's still good. And just slide it in. Good. It's like 11:55, 11 or 12:05. That's good. They're basically in unison still. Now, before I tighten everything up, I'm going to use a small pin and first look through the hole, make sure there's no obstructions. Line this up like so. Go ahead and punch this little pin in with my fingers. Good. If you have to force these parts, you can cause damage. So the fact that you line this up to center it, punch this little pin just with your fingers, that's a good sign. You can go ahead and take this out now. Now let's go ahead and get the selectors. So for the left side, I'm going to use the ball bearing. Put it in a little hole for the semi-auto mode. I still have the spring in there and the little screw. And I'm just going to vertically drop it down in place. Press because the spring is going to have some resistance. And tighten that 2mm screw. Good. A little play for the spring. Flip it over. Looks fine to me, semi-auto mode. Drop that lever in. And done. Now to check, switch, safe, semi, full auto. Good. Now you will notice this will be a little stiffer because of the spring and the little ball bearing. Well, this side has a little play. They're being steel parts. They're not going to break on you. If you really wanted to, you could switch the parts out or even drill the hole and make a little detent if you want. But other than that, it's fine for me. So go ahead and put the little pin in. Tap it. And you're basically done. That's how you install the ambidextrous selector. So hope that answers your question. But let me go ahead and put the rest of it together. So go ahead and put the mag release in, flip it over, use spring and a little button. Try to tighten it a couple times. Okay, I got one rotation, and press it in and spin, righty tighty, lefty loosey. And good. It will be flush basically with the button and the little hole. Good, good, done. Now go ahead and get your little bolt release, slide it in, and look in the mag well. You're gonna notice how in the mag well you can see it attached to this little part. So if you press on it, it'll move. If it's not latched in there, it's not gonna work. Grab the little pin. I put the O-ring on the right side and literally just press it in, and that's good. The tension from being in here keeps it in place, it won't fall out. In worst case scenario, if it does get loose, you can put a tiny little drop of glue on your finger and just wipe it there to create like this little barrier, and it's not gonna come out. Okay, let's go ahead and put this back in. Okay, I'm gonna have red wire in the front, black in the back. Line it up and get your two screws. Just line them up and gently tighten. And for the VFC model, you want to do is evenly tighten these screws. If you tighten too much, it can, well, for some of the older models, it can throw off the linet for the bolt. Just hand tighten, nothing crazy. And as I mentioned earlier, make sure the wires are routed to the back. So the red wire comes up, wraps around, red wire comes up, wraps around, goes to the back. Grab your motor, red pole front, black pole back, drop it in. It's springy, that's good. Go ahead and plug in your little black wire and plug in your red wire. Done. Double check, make sure it's springy, and also make sure that there's no wires obstructing these screw holes. So insert, press down, and it's basically flush. Grab the other little screw, tighten, tighten, good, done. Now for the stock, go ahead and install a little sling plate. Remember the castle and I backed it out, just leave it like that. And the buffer tube. Now the trick is for this one, if you have like a longer screw, like for an Echo or Marie, it's like literally this long, you can drop it down there. But this is being short, you have the little wall here, so you have room for a LiPo battery. What I'm gonna do is, sling plate there, you stay there. I'm going to basically slide this in while I route the wires to the bottom. This is being a half moon shape, so the wire's going to go in the bottom section there and out of the way so I can slide them through. So I'm just going to pull with the thumb, slide in. Cool. Now as you can see, I have a little screw sticking out, and I'm literally just going to hold the screw, line up this feisty sling plate. Jeez. Go forward, keep pressure on it, tighten, and done. Tighten, good. And castle nut. Tighten that down. Rotate just like 2-3 millimeters and it's locked. Basically this will pull the buffer tube out, the screw will pull it in, and they basically lock in place. So it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, now for the upper receiver, let's go ahead and install that. And one thing I've noticed with the VFCs in a PHX rifle is sometimes the piston, sometimes the barrel will only go forward this much and stop. And you're like, what is going on? There's a small stabilized collar up front in the outer barrel. Basically to line that up. So either you look down the barrel and use like a small tool to wiggle it, or you unsafely look down the barrel and line it up. It's not loaded, you're fine, but it's just against your conscience. Press it forward and you're good. So now you can slide forward, lock it. You notice it's flush in the back, flush up front, and you can literally just press like so and you're good. If you have to force this or any of the parts, you might cause damage. Yep, it's in all the way, no problems. Pull the reverse or pull the charging handle. Cool. Uh-oh. Probably just full of dirt. Oh, there it goes. And that's why you clean your guns. Okay, so that's basically how you take apart the JAG Arms PHX15 rifle and put it back together. If you have a VFC, this would work as well. So hopefully this video has been helpful, and see you guys next time. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and share with your friends that are curious about this gun or how to work on the selector or just this in general. If you have suggestions on what I should work on next, let me know and comment below and I can do my best to get that. Thanks again, and see you guys next time. Bye.